This happened when I was a young child, maybe like 8 years old. My parents had me late. My two older siblings are both at least 10 years older than me. I was woken up in the middle of the night to a commotion from downstairs one night. It was my parents. I cracked my door open and heard my parents freaking out about something. I wasn't sure what it was. I went to the stairway and stood at the top, calling down, "Mom, Dad." My mom came to the bottom of the stairs and said to me, "Go back to bed." I listened without asking any questions. I could tell they were stressed about something, though. I was trying to go back to sleep when I heard the front door downstairs slam shut. And then it was dead silence. I presumed they left the house, but I wasn't sure why. Either way, I listened to my mom and went back to sleep. I woke up again to sounds downstairs. Once more, it was the sound of the front door closing and then footsteps, but no talking. Naturally, I assumed they were back home and just being quiet so that they wouldn't wake me up. I heard occasional steps and thuds from downstairs. I heard drawers and cabinets being opened and closed, and I thought for sure I heard the fridge opening too. I thought it was my older brother Chris, who's 10 years older than me, and at the time he was already driving, so he was going out and coming home late, so him getting home at like 2 a.m. and rummaging the fridge wasn't abnormal at all. These were all things I was telling myself, logical explanations as to what I was hearing. Eventually, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, getting louder and closer until they reached the top, and then made their way first thing to my door. My door quietly and slowly opened. I didn't sit up or move, I just had my eyes open facing the door as I was still laying there. There weren't any lights on outside of my room. Whoever was walking around was doing so in the dark, so all I saw was this black mass at my doorway, resembling the shape of someone's head. I said every name starting from Chris, to Mom, to Dad, then I just said, "Who's there?" They didn't reply. They just closed the door and I was left there, confused but mildly creeped out. I heard footsteps going downstairs. I was convinced it was my dad now just coming to check on me after getting home, though I wasn't sure why he was ignoring me. I didn't hear anything from downstairs for a while now. I allowed curiosity to get the better of me and I went downstairs in the dark. I kept all the lights off as I was approaching the kitchen, and I froze at the doorway, noticing a tall figure standing right in the middle of the kitchen. I said, "Dad," assuming it was him just based off the size of this person. A deep voice said, "Go back upstairs." I ran back up the stairs to my room and closed the door and jumped under the covers. All I was thinking was, why did my dad's voice sound like that? The reality of a stranger being in the house didn't dawn on my innocent little mind, not until a little later when I heard the front door opening and a commotion from downstairs again, the voices of my parents. I went to the top of the stairway again, and they were shocked to see I was still awake. I asked what happened. They told me that Chris had a little accident, but that he was going to be fine. I found out months later that he had gotten into a car accident, driving in a condition that he shouldn't have been driving in. My parents got a call from the hospital, and so they rushed to see him first thing, leaving me to sleep. I asked my dad if he had come in my room before, and that was when I learned that they had been gone for hours. My mom started freaking out, yelling at my dad because he had neglected to lock the door when they rushed out of the house. Me telling my parents about the person at my bedroom door and in the kitchen caused my dad to search the house with his gun and my mom to call the police. The last thing I really remember was being asked by a police officer to give my story. My parents tell me that they felt like morons having to explain to the cops that they left me alone and left the door unlocked. I don't think anything of value was stolen, even though whoever broke into the house clearly didn't have intentions of harming me. Having a complete stranger in your house is already a terrifying ordeal. Now imagine going through that at 8 years old.
When I was about 9 years old, I lived with my mom and little sister in a small house in a quiet town. The street was mostly safe, and kids would ride their bikes outside in the summer. But even back then, there were things that didn't feel right about the house. My mom used to say it was old, and old houses make noises. But some of the things I remember from that time didn't sound like house noises. They sound like something else. Something I still don't really know how to explain. The first thing started one night when I couldn't sleep. I was lying in my bed with a blanket pulled up to my chin, staring at the little glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling. My room wasn't very big, just a bed, a dresser, and a toy chest near the window. I remember looking at the shadows on the wall from the trees outside. The branches swayed whenever the wind blew, and I told myself that's what I was seeing. But then I noticed one shadow wasn't moving like the others. It was in the corner, down low near my toy chest. At first, I thought it was a pile of clothes or one of my big stuffed animals. I almost laughed at myself because I thought I was just being a scared kid. But then I blinked, and the shadow was gone. I remember feeling cold, like the kind of cold that comes from the inside of your body, not the air. I pulled the blanket over my head and fell asleep. The next morning, I didn't even think about it until I saw my toy chest. It was standing open, like someone had been looking inside. I never left it open because my mom would yell if toys spilled out. I closed it and didn't say anything. A few weeks later, my sister, who was only 5, told my mom she didn't like the man in the closet. I basically froze when she said it because she said it so casually, as if it were just a fact. My mom brushed it off and said, "Little kids imagine things." But I saw my sister's face, and I could tell she wasn't making it up. She said he would stand in the closet at night and whisper, but she couldn't hear the words. My mom tucked her in that night and said a prayer with her, but she didn't check the closet. Later that night, I woke up because I heard something dragging across my floor, like someone pulling their nails across the wood. I was too scared to move, but the sound stopped right by my bed. I was sure if I looked over the side, I'd see something staring up at me. I just froze there, clutching the blanket until I fell asleep again. The next morning, there were long scratches on the floor right by the side of my bed. They were fresh, like someone had carved into the wood. I remember running to show my mom, but she got angry. She said I must have been playing with something sharp or dragging furniture. I swore I hadn't, but she didn't believe me. After that, the nights got worse. I would hear faint whispers, almost like a radio on low volume, and it would come from my closet. Sometimes my sister would cry in her room, and when I ran in, she would be pointing at the corner saying, "He's there, he's there." I never saw him, but I believed her. You know when someone's watching you and the hairs on your arms stand up? That's how it felt. The scariest night was in the middle of winter. I woke up and saw my bedroom door was open, even though I always shut it. I could see the hallway light because my mom left one on for us at night. But then, as I watched, the light in the hall went out. I thought maybe the bulb turned out. Then I heard footsteps coming down the hall. They stopped outside my door. I wanted to scream from my mom, but nothing came out. The door creaked, and I saw a tall, dark shape lean in, just its head poking into the room. I shut my eyes and pretended to be asleep. When I opened them again, the door was closed, and I was alone. In the morning, I asked my mom if she had come into my room. She said no. She had been asleep all night. My sister said she saw the man again, standing by her bed. We told her together, and she finally looked worried. She lit a candle and said a prayer in each room of the house. Things were quiet for a little while after that, but it didn't last. One afternoon, I came home from school before my mom. I was sitting on the couch doing homework when I heard the sound of the toy chest in my room slammed shut. The thing is, nobody else was home. I hoped it was just the wind, but when I walked down the hall, I saw my bedroom door was wide open. My toy chest was closed, but all my toys were scattered on the floor like someone had dumped them out. I backed away and waited outside until my mom came home. When I told her, she still didn't believe me and said the cat knocked things over. Years later, after we moved out, I asked my mom if she ever experienced anything in that house. She hesitated, then said yes. She said sometimes she would wake up and see a shadow standing in her doorway. She said she never told us because she didn't want to scare us, but she admitted she believed there was something wrong with that house. She said she thought it was a man, someone who used to live there. She never said much more, but I know what I saw, and I know what my sister saw too. Even now as an adult, when I think about that time, I feel sick in my stomach. It wasn't imagination, it was something real, and it wanted us to know it was there. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I still hear the sound of nails dragging across the floor.
When I was 10 years old, my family moved into a bigger house because my mom had just gotten remarried and we needed more space. The house was nice, newer than the one we lived in before, and it was in a quiet neighborhood with a lot of trees. I thought I would be happy there. At first, everything seemed normal, but then little things started happening that made me feel like the house wasn't right. My bedroom was at the end of the hall. It had 2 big windows that faced the backyard, and a closet that was deeper than the one I had before. I liked it until the first night I slept there. I woke up around midnight because I heard something moving in the closet. It wasn't loud, just soft shuffling, like clothes being brushed against. I stared at the closet and told myself it was just the house settling. I know it sounds cliché, but most people, even as children, would assume small sounds coming from here and there in a house are just typical house noises that you hear every day. But then I saw the door move. It didn't swing open, but it shivered like someone had lightly pressed on it from the inside. I wanted to run to my mom's room, but I was frozen. I stayed that way until I fell back asleep, still staring at the closet. The next morning, the closet door was cracked open just a little, even though I had shut it tight. I asked my mom if she had gone in there, and she said no. She said maybe the air vents pushed it, but I knew it wasn't the air vents. The nights after that got worse. I started hearing tapping on the window glass. At first I thought it was tree branches, but when I looked, there were no branches near the window. The tapping would go on for minutes, and when I pulled the blanket over my head, it would stop. I tried to ignore it until one night I finally peeked out. I saw a pale hand pressed against the window. It was on the outside, but the window was on the 2nd floor, way too high for anyone to reach without a ladder. The hand stayed there for a long time, just pressed, without moving. Then it slid down slowly and disappeared. I didn't sleep at all that night. I told my mom, and she started cracking up laughing when I told her. She didn't believe me for a second. When she saw that I wasn't just saying it as a prank or a joke, she leaned more into trying to convince me that I was probably in a half-asleep state and seeing things from my dream. But I knew that was a load of horseshit. My stepdad didn't believe me either. He said I was making it up for attention, and he also got a laugh out of it. But I started noticing he kept the hallway light on at night, so maybe he didn't feel as safe as he pretended. A month later, my little brother, who was 4, started talking about the white lady. He would say she came into his room and sat on his bed. My mom thought it was just his imagination, but one night I heard him screaming. I ran in and saw him curled up under his blanket crying. When he finally calmed down, he said the white lady had been standing by his door, just staring at him. She said her eyes were all black. I believed him because of what I had seen at my window.
I started sleeping with the blanket over my head every night. But that didn't stop the dreams. I began to dream of the white lady, too. She would stand in the corner of my room and whisper my name. Her voice was dry, like leaves rubbing together. Sometimes I would wake up and still hear it, faint, but definitely real. One night I woke up and saw her standing at the foot of my bed. She was taller than anyone I had ever seen. Her head almost touched the ceiling. She wore a long white dress that moved even though the air was still. Her hair was black and stringy, and her face was pale like chalk. Her eyes were like empty black holes. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I shut my eyes, and when I opened them again, she was gone. But my closet door was wide open. After that, I couldn't go in my closet anymore. I begged my mom to let me sleep in her room, but she said I need to learn how to be brave. I think she didn't want to admit she was scared too. The worst night came during a storm. Heavy rain and loud wind. I woke up to the sound of my window creaking. When I looked, the window was slowly sliding open. Even though it was locked, I could see the lock turning by itself. The window opened all the way and I saw the white lady climb in. She didn't move like a person. She floated. Her feet never touched the floor. She drifted toward my bed and leaned down until her face was right in front of mine. I felt her cold breath on my skin. She whispered my name again, and this time I screamed as loud as I could. My mom and stepdad came running in, but when they turned on the light, the window was closed and locked, and no one else was there. They yelled at me for scaring everyone, but I could see in their faces that they were worried. The weird thing about that part of the story is that I don't vividly remember what happened between the moment I saw that lady floating towards me and my screaming. The best I can explain it is that I sort of blacked out for a moment before remembering screaming and having my parents rush into the room. My window was closed again, which would suggest to people that it was just a night terror. That's what my parents believed it was. I think my mom started taking me to therapy for a while because they were worried about me. We lived in that house for 3 more years, and I never got used to it. My brother stopped talking about the white lady, but I think it was because he was too scared, not because she stopped visiting. Sometimes when it storms at night, I still get scared to even get up to go to the bathroom or get water. I'll glance over at corners of the room, making sure I don't see something tall lurking there. It goes to show how these kinds of things stick with you into adulthood. I'd be more open to believing it was simply night terrors if it weren't for the fact that I saw that hand on my window before my little brother even first mentioned the white lady. I guess this is just one of those freakish experiences that cannot be explained.